Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review number 380. Today we're going to talk about Mysterium. Now if you notice, the box does not say Mysterium on it. That's because this is the Ukrainian edition of the game. Now this is going to be the first of many reviews that I'm going to be doing where GameSurplus.com has provided me a copy. So we worked out sort of a sponsorship, partnership kind of deal, and GameSurplus is very good about bringing over hard to find foreign games and importing them into the United States. So for example, you cannot yet find Mysterium published. It's going to be published later this year by Asmodee with completely different art, and the rules I think are going to change a little bit. But you can find editions of this. This is the Ukrainian edition. It's also basically just like the Polish edition. There is some rule differences, and there's also an Italian edition floating around. But Game Surplus is great about bringing that stuff over. I've got We're Syndas Volk, which is We the People, which is another Polish game that I'll be reviewing shortly. So definitely go check them out. And so we made an agreement about once a month I'll do a review from a game they provided, one that I've been looking for and excited about, and go definitely check out their website. Now, this game does not come with Ukrainian rules, or excuse me, English rules. So you got to go to BGG and print out. So this is the rules that I printed out. There are a few different rule sets online, but you can kind of mix and match, and this is sort of a toolboxy game. So adhering to the rules too strictly isn't a big deal. So what is the idea of the game? Well, one player is going to be the ghost, and the other players are going to be paranormal investigators. And they're going to be trying to figure out what happened to the ghost, basically who killed the ghost, through the ghost playing cards, but the ghost can't speak at all. So to be glib about it, it's basically cooperative Dixit. But let's jump into how the game works, and I'll give you my thoughts on it. Okay, so I've got here a display set up. Not quite enough for a 4-player game, but let's, for argument's sake, say we're playing a 4-player game. You're going to make different columns of these cards based on the number of players. And you can see there's 3 types in a column. So we've got an item column row here, and so this is the fork. So you can think like sort of like Clue. It's the fork was used in the billiard room or the game room, and it was done here by, you know, Professor X or something, right? And so these are different scenarios that have been set up. So what we're going to do is we're going to take like a location, and you know, we'll take a excuse me, here we go, location, and then maybe a character, and then a different item from the other deck. So you can see there's actually 2 decks for each of these rows. So there's 2 location decks, and there's 2 people decks and 2 item decks. So we'll do these randomly, and then what I'll do is I'll take one of the tokens from one of the players and then put them and mark them in my set of cards as the ghost. And so the players won't see this. This will all be hidden information, but for each player there'll be 1 item, 1 location, and 1 person. So I'll do that to start the game, and then again the game is going to go over 7 rounds or 7 nights, and the players need to figure out which items I've associated to them. I'm going to give them sort of like through dreams or, you know, hauntings or something, and try to get them to guess that. And so once each player has guessed all 3 items, if they've done so before the end of the 7th round, then we're going to move in sort of a final mystery where the players will work together and sort of solve one collectively. Now the way this is going to happen, we have these huge deck of cards here, and these are very much like Dixit cards. You can see very surreal imagery. So here's a good one. You got a lion on a ship that's sort of on the ocean, maybe the desert, with some camels, and then this person here sort of looking out with a periscope, and these people here and all kinds of stuff. And so these are really cool illustrated. This is odd. You've got sort of a wing and then another bird, and kind of like a crater or something with some sort of, I don't know, almost religious or medieval looking things, and some shadowy figures. Really cool artwork. Diamonds or rubies or gems and plants, and sort of like underwater, maybe in the sky or something like that. Very cool stuff. So depending on which edition you have, you're going to get 6 or 7 of these per round. What you're going to do is you're going to give these to a player. So let me draw 6 of these here, a few of these. So let's say I had marked you there with this fork, okay? Now there's things that you're going to try to notice about it. And the items are sort of the easiest one to guess, so to speak, because there's not as much stuff in them. You know, if we go here to the location, if I'm going to play a card here, or multiple cards, and you're going to try to guess that this is your location, I could be referring to anything in here, whereas the item is basically the color and the thing. So the order that you actually resolve these can change the game up quite a bit, and it kind of depending on which rules you get, you'll maybe do the items first or the items last or whatever. It doesn't really matter. You can kind of play it however you want, but let's say we're going to do the items first. And so then I'll take and give you a card, and maybe I will give you, let's see here, maybe I give you this one because it's got a lot of blue in it. So I'll give you this and maybe something else. Maybe this is, I wouldn't do this, but you've got these little pins going into this apple thing, and it's sharp like the fork. So I give you these two, which would probably be really confusing, but sometimes the hand of cards you get, it's very difficult to figure out what to give somebody. So you give these to them, then you draw back up to 6 or 7 cards, and you go through and give each player a certain number of cards. And then they're gonna take and they're gonna mark which ones they think that they are. Sometimes they'll mark the same one. And then if they guess it, you're gonna let them know, you'll reveal it, and then they're gonna move on to, let's say the blue one was right here and the red one was right, but yellow and green were wrong. The next round, or the next night, is going to be these two players still trying to guess their item, and these two players trying to guess their the location row. So you go through and do the same type of thing again, where you give everybody multiple cards, redraw, and they'll make a guess. And so if the game goes really well, everybody will guess everything in the first 3 rounds, which I don't know if I've seen it happen. I played it a couple times. I think it almost happened like one player didn't get it right and then they got it in the 4th round. So I've also seen people like take the entire game to get it as well. So it just kind of depends who the ghost is and the card deal and how creative people are. So again, I'll be dealing cards here, and then, you know, hopefully people are trying to guess what I'm referring to. Now, if you don't get it right, you keep the cards that I gave in front of you. So then you have sort of a matrix of a reference to say, oh, he gave me this one last turn, but it might actually get more confusing the more cards you have in front of you. Now, there's a few different ways to do the end game. Once everybody has guessed all 3 items for themselves, then you kind of go into a final guess, sort of to figure out the last killer. Now, you may take the cards that have all been guessed on before and shuffle them up, or, you know, you might do the ones that weren't guessed and leave them out there. There's a few ways that I've read to do it. So just kind of pick one to do it. And we have seen the end game be kind of anticlimactic with less players because there's not as much to choose from and it's pretty easy to figure out. But the one thing that you do is you just put out 2 cards and that's it. And then that's it and you're stuck. So if you kind of get it early in the game, everybody gets caught up, just by the matter of rounds left, you can kind of do a process of elimination. But if there's more players, there's going to be more stuff on the table. So the number of rounds will be not in your favor as much there. Now, depending on the difficulty level that you choose, the ghost player can also kind of shed their hand, discard all the cards, and then redraw if they have a bunch of cards and they can't figure out any cards to give anybody. If you play easy or normal or more difficult levels, you get to do that less and less times throughout the game. So that's pretty much the whole game. Okay, so that is Mysterium, and I just realized that I said the wrong number of cards at the end. I said 2, and it's actually 3, at least according to these rules. We played a variant the other night where we did only 2, and that was still in my brain. So that kind of leads me to my first point, is you can kind of play with this one and change the rules up as much as you want, because there's no text on the cards. It's all this cool imagery. And so you can play just little sort of mind games with the game and just sit down, like, I don't know, literally like play 1 round almost and say, okay, here's 3 cards or a bunch of rows of cards, and then I'm going to play some of the dream cards, these dark blue cards here, and you have to pick the right column. And that's it. And you can just do that for fun and not even like play a whole game. So it's kind of like Dixit in that manner, where the scoring or whatever, winning, isn't the most important part. It's kind of the whole like telepathy of it, which is kind of cool. But if you do want to play, you know, by the rules, that works perfectly well, and that's actually how I recommend it. It's not like I'm recommending not to play by the rules, but you can sort of tailor it towards your likes. Like the whole order of the item cards, you know, you can do those last or do those first, or, you know, you can just play around with it and sort of change up the metagame, if you will, a little bit as well. So what do I think of the game? It's really, really fun. I'm really enjoyable. I like the art quite a bit. I should comment on this. Now, I've seen some of the sketches for the Asmodee version, and they're very more almost Disney-like. I don't know if I would go that far, but this has a little bit more darker feel, a little bit more Victorian, more surrealist kind of vibe, more Dixit kind of vibe. So I like that quite a bit, and I think there are going to be people out there, frankly, that will want this version over the Asmodee version, or maybe both versions, because I can see there's a ton of cards here and there is a good mix of variety, but the game is going to be easily expandable. You can just print out a whole new set of Dream cards and just put those in there. If you own Dixit, you can take out a stack of Dixit cards and use those to do the relationships of the locations and things. But it's quite fun. I mean, it's very frustrating as the ghost. I've been the ghost and the, the investigator, because you're playing the cards and you got to be really, it's not too hard, but you got to be careful not to like give a hint. You can't like go, oh, you don't want to make any body languages, because then you're going to give it away. I mean, it's not difficult at all. It's not like Hanabi, where sometimes it's very difficult to control yourself. This is very easy to control yourself. You just put it down and then you can go take a nap if you want while the players figure it out. But you don't want to do that, because it's actually amusing to hear the relationships that people make with the cards. And as you play with sort of the same group, you're going to get to know each other in a different way, and how a particular ghost will operate. Because you can try to really zero in and say, oh, this item is in both cards, so that's going to link it up. Whereas another ghost maybe plays more impressionistically, where like this is a sort of a violent, angry card, and this is sort of a violent scene or stormy scene or something. So the way people sort of operate, with their brain is going to work out differently. It's just kind of fun. It's interesting. It's not super like a game, but it's cool, like a sort of thought experiment or something. It's really cool. I really enjoy this kind of game. So that's really neat, and the game can play differently. I would say I recommend it definitely with 4 or more. That would be my recommendation, because like with 2 or 3, there's, like I said, the whole process elimination thing comes in. The end game isn't as exciting. Oh, and I didn't mention that you sort of like vote on the last one. So if you arrange the tokens so you can pick a column, and then whoever the majority of players pick as the column that you're sort of saying at the end of the game is like the murderer, and like this is the Mr. Pink in the pool side with the shotgun or whatever. You're saying that's where the murder was. People actually vote on it. So there's a lot of discussion and sort of, vibrant talk that's going to happen at the table. That's really cool. But you don't get that with less than 4. So the game plays up to 7, of course. So the more players, it adds them a little more. It's a little harder. So because there's so much stuff happening, and then that end game is a lot more difficult than with less players, and you just kind of do process elimination. So I would recommend a little bit actually doing variants with less players. But it's really fun, and I think folks should definitely check it out, and go to GameStarterPlus.com. I don't know if they have any copies yet. They sell out other stuff pretty quickly, so I'm usually watching their front page anyway. But definitely take a look at it. I gave that high recommendation for me. So thanks.